Welcome to a special edition of the Darden Admissions Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'd like to share a recent conversation I had with two financial aid colleagues, Jennifer Holvey and Reese Mears. I recently caught up with Jennifer and Reese to talk more about their background in financial aid, what they enjoy about working with students, as well as some of the recent loan changes resulting from the big, beautiful bill. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. As always, if this conversation is helpful for you, please like this episode and subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an update. Remember, you can always check the episode description for links to Darden blogs, social channels, and more. And now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Jennifer Holvey and Reese Mears. Jennifer, Reese, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Brett.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's good to talk with you. Jennifer, how's everything? How are you doing?
We are doing great. We've had a great start to 2026. We just launched spring semester and went really, really well.
Reese, how's everything?
Brett, I'm living the dream. It's a good time over here with planning for our admitted students, helping them talk about their plans, working on financing their MBA. Really excited to have them join us in just a few months.
Yeah, start of school will be here before you know it. August, right around the corner.
January's already flying by.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you both. The inspiration for this conversation was really kind of twofold. One, how much you enjoy connecting with prospective students. So we wanted to give our listeners a chance to hear from members of the financial aid team. I know how closely you work with students as they prepare to start school, but also there is a lot happening in the financial aid world these days with the big, beautiful bill and grad plus loans, et cetera, and maybe lower awareness about some of these changes and what they might mean for borrowers and students looking to pay for school as they prepare to start school in August. And so thought we'd have you on here kind of twofold. One, to introduce you, give people a chance to get to know you a little bit better, but then to also talk about some of these changes. So I want to start just by asking you some questions about your background, and then we'll get into the sort of financial aid landscape. So Jennifer, how did you get into financial aid?
Yeah, I'll tell this abbreviated version. But I, by way of background, grew up on a small family farm in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains down near Roanoke, Virginia. I'm a native Virginian. And so my undergrad degree was in agricultural economics. And on graduation, I went to work for an ag finance company. And so I call it my quarter life crisis. At about 25, I realized that I didn't like what I was doing. And I was making money, but I didn't feel like I was making a difference, and I did want to make a difference. So my only background was finance. And so I said, finance, financial aid, how hard can that be? When I got ready to go to college, I didn't really know how the college system worked. And so I thought I can get a job in financial aid and I can help students figure out how this all works. And so I was very excited about that. And then I actually got the job in financial aid and realized that the two things have nothing in common. So that was 35 years ago. So yeah, that's my background.
You're here working with Darden students. Tell us specifically what your role is.
Yes, I'm the Senior Director of Financial Aid. And I've been at the University of Virginia. I'm in my 19th year at the University of Virginia. I've been at Darden just over a year. I spent 15 years previous to Darden at the law school. And so I'm super excited to be here. I've loved working at Darden, and I absolutely love getting to work with you and the admissions team. You're my favorite podcaster, Brett. I told you that the other day. It's a true statement. And I have absolutely loved having Reese on my team. He's been a phenomenal addition.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. We'll certainly take compliments here about our podcast on our podcast. So thank you for taking some time to be here. Reese, tell us more about how you got into financial aid.
So, Brett, I went to college at Furman University in upstate South Carolina. So, if any Paladins are listening, go Dens. And then I actually went to the Wake Forest School of Business for their Master's in Management. And it's really interesting because what pulled me into Wake Forest was actually like their scholarship programs. And so I think it's very fitting that now I work in scholarship programs at a school of business. And so, finished up Wake Forest and was looking at career opportunities, was looking at like Bank of America's corporate, analyst development program. Kind of like Jennifer said, quarter life crisis. I was like, do I really want to do this? I don't know. So I thought, what did I enjoy doing? When I was in college, I worked for 3 years in my department's, administrative offices. So that was like I was like 19, my first experience. I got to see like the beating heart of an administrative office. And so I was like, you know what? I actually, really enjoyed that. So I went on and did another master's degree in higher education at Penn State, and then my wife and I ended up moving up to Virginia in 2021, and I started another master's degree in educational psychology at University of Virginia School of Education. And the original plan was to kind of continue on and do PhD in higher education. I feel like I just kind of born from that academic kind of mindset. And the post-COVID world kind of funky with PhD funding. The funding didn't pan out for me, and so, kind of like, talking around connections. I had the degree in higher education. Let's see, maybe I can pick up a job here at UVA. And School of Nursing was looking for somebody to manage their scholarship programs. And it's like, okay, sure, as long as y'all are cool with someone bringing in like, a hardcore academic focus, like, let's talk about some scholarship theory here. And so, spend a few years architecting the School of Nursing scholarship programs. Then I spent the next year re-architecting everything I had done the first year because it wasn't great. Spent another year re-architecting probably about half of what I had just started over the second year. And so it was a very iterative time. And then one day Jennifer pops in my teams and it's like, hey, want to come over to Darden for lunch? And you know, kind of things happen from there. And before you know it, I'm here at Darden.
And tell us specifically what's your role on the financial aid team?
So my role sits at the intersection really of financial aid and scholarships, and talking with students about financing the MBA, especially for our prospective and admitted students. I'd say at the core, my job is I like to view my job as really helping students, understand how to finance their education. Student finance, financial aid. There's complexities. There's so many terms, and I really want to help them understand financing in a way that's informed, but it's also aligned with their long term goals. Also, like, financial aid for me really sits at that perfect intersection of my quantitative skills and academic training in higher education. I've always been drawn to that space where theory and practice meet, and big believer in that feedback loop. And I think that practice informs theory, and theory helps us do our work better. And financial aid is just one of those places that I can live in that loop every day. I mean, Brad and Jeffrey, y'all get the joy of sitting in these planning meetings with me, and I'm like, I really would like to look at the elasticity of this one variable on that variable. Or I have this hypothesis. Maybe I can go calculate to see if it's statistically significant. Yeah, I bring that kind of vibe to our fun meetings.
And
I
we're
appreciate that.
so glad you do. Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, we did not talk about scholarship elasticity much last year. I can tell you, Reese, it's something that's coming up with more frequency this year.
Oh,
So
man,
it's great.
I'm so happy I could bring that to y'all.
Well, one of the things, and Reese, you've already started to hint at it, is how much work your team does supporting students. And Jennifer, I'm curious, obviously you're leading this team philosophically. How do you think about how your team works with students? What are your goals with these interactions?
Yeah, it's a great question. And look, this is job one for us, right? The students are the reason we're here. And so um, I have a personal bias for counseling. And so when I first came to Darden, one of the first things we did was put up an online link so that students could easily schedule with us. It's a bookings link. It's on our webpage because we wanted students to be able to meet with us anytime that they wanted to talk to a counselor, and we wanted to lower all the barriers to that. Our goal, our mission, is to provide um, outstanding customer service, retail customer service to our student population with meticulous attention to detail. That's our mission. And so that gets reinforced regularly. And our team is all so excited about it. We have a fabulous team here in the Darden Financial Aid Office, and they are absolutely committed to helping students. Every person here is personally committed to that. And I look for that. I looked for that when I was building the team. And we have this group of people that are just like-minded in wanting to put the needs of our students above everything else that we do. And so it's really, really super important to us. So we spend a lot of time talking to students. We spend a lot of time answering emails, and we try to spend a lot of time customizing our advice and counsel and approach to whatever the particular needs of students are, because we have such a diverse student population. We have students from all over, in different formats of their MBA pursuits, and we want to make sure that we're not just handing out cookie cutter information, but that we're talking to you and getting the information about your situation. And maybe you're married, maybe you got kids, maybe you're an international student, and maybe you're somebody who's in the part-time program and you're holding down a full-time job while you're doing the part-time MBA. And so you've got some special considerations there. And so we want to make sure that we are really attending to that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. The personal touch obviously comes through. I know y'all have already started engaging with students as they're making their decision, kind of weighing things out, or even beginning to plan for the start of school. Very easy to schedule a meeting with your team. Reese, what do you enjoy about working with students? You mentioned like really enjoying being at this intersection of sort of theory and practice, but what do you enjoy about working with students?
Brett, I really appreciate you asking that question. I really really value building. I kind of view it as like partnerships. With prospective and admitted students, kind of as they're working through kind of that part of their enrollment journey. Figuring out like, does Darden the right place for them. I really really value trust with the students. I like to say like like trust is like my currency, and so I really really value meeting students where they are both like financially and also emotionally, because like there's just so many emotions that intersect with finances, and I really want to try to understand where the students are and do what I can to help them. I like to think that when it comes to financing the MBA, it's not just about numbers. It's also about helping students have a clear understanding with those numbers and also having a high degree of confidence in their understanding on those numbers.
Yeah, I think about this decision. It's probably one of the biggest financial decisions students have made at this point in their life in many
Uh-huh.
cases. And there's complexity to it, right? They may be taking out educational loans for the first time, or maybe they have prior loans from a previous educational experience. And so there's like layering here that can make this a complicated decision for students. Reese, I'm curious, like in your experience working closely with students, what's one of the bigger misconceptions people have about financial aid?
Oh, Brett, I'm so happy you asked that. So, I feel like there's several misconceptions about financial aid, and I think there is some degree of just a little misinformation that can float around financial aid. And one of the things that I like to really talk about, because like as you said, a good number of our students are exploring educational loans to help finance their MBA, and I will tell students that I don't believe the real risk is in borrowing the educational loans. The real risk is borrowing the educational loans without a plan, without an understanding. So if you are not kind of looking at, maybe the terms of the loans, or not kind of thinking about, what is this going to look like when the loan enters repayment, that's when I feel like, that's a risk. And I really try to help students kind of clear up that misinformation of the concept of a student loan. There can be an emotionally charged term, and they can cause feelings and kind of immediate thoughts. And I want to help students kind of break that down and be like, okay, let me do what I can to help you, give you the knowledge, give you the tools, give you the resources so that you can approach this very important aspect of financing the MBA for a lot of students. And you can take that and build a plan. So that way you're confident in your plan leading up to the MBA, through your time in the MBA program, and then after you finish the MBA and you're in your repayment. An important kind of consideration that I talk to students all the time about loans is also kind of like the ROI of programs, because that's such an important kind of aspect of student loans is thinking about repayment.
Jennifer, I'm curious, in your experience, obviously you mentioned 35 years in financial aid. You probably heard some misconceptions or run into students who maybe have misimpressions about financial aid. What's something that comes to mind when you think about that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would say is that students don't realize prospective students may not realize how much help is available. they feel like they need to navigate this process on their own. And we live in a world where we're going to our AI buddies or our Google search bar and trying to figure this out. And I would just want to say you've got a whole team of people here that are just excited to talk to you and excited to get to meet you. And so don't you don't have to figure this out on your own. I literally got into financial aid because I came from a family background that no one was able to help me figure out how college worked. And I had kind of made a mess of my GPA and my college credits by the time I started figuring out how the system clicked. And I thought, I don't want anybody else to go through that. I don't want anybody else to go through the situation not understanding how it works. Financial aid is such a unique field. You only need to know it when you need to know it and for this really limited period of time. And so let us worry about the details. Let us worry about keeping up with all the rules and regs and what you can and can't do. And call us, text us, email us, set up a video call with us. We'd be so excited to talk to you. So I think that's really one of the things I would put out there.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point about people's awareness of financial aid, right? Typically, probably low awareness, and then all of a sudden you get all this information. You have all these forms you're filling out, and probably feels like a lot. What do you wish more students knew when it comes to paying for school? Because I think about that all the time, right? You're researching MBA programs. You're obviously learning a lot about the school. You may be thinking about scholarships, but you probably aren't thinking about, how do you pay for this or that sort of real nuts and bolts of the financial aid. So, Jennifer, I'm curious, what do you wish more students knew?
Yeah. So I would say that one of the most important things to know is there's a way to pay for it. So students who come in and sit down with us and are like, I don't even know if I can do this. There are ways to pay for school. And what we generally see is that it is a combination of resources. Students will bring personal resources to the table. A lot of our students come to us with work experience. And so they may have assets, they may have some savings, they may have a 401k that they can borrow against for educational purposes. So there's resources that are available personally. We have a robust scholarship program at Darden, and we're proud of that. We also, uh, uh, as I've mentioned several times, uh, are glad to sit down and do really specific personal counseling with you to talk with you about the fact that you've got a baby or something that's got considerations. Um, we also absolutely see students utilizing student loans. And as Reese mentioned earlier, that doesn't need to be devastating. Student loans are a landscape that we can help navigate, right? And if it's a combination of loans, scholarships, personal resources, and very often in the MBA world, you can get some, if you worked or have a employer agreement of some type, you can get some employer sponsorship money. Then we can help you put all of those things together in a way that is a plan for paying for your MBA and a plan for paying back any debt that you take on after your MBA. So uh, again, I'll keep saying it, but if people will come and talk to us, we can help walk you through all of those various options. There are also some external scholarships that are available. Good search services out there. Fastweb.com, scholarships.com are good places to go. The other thing I would want to say to folks looking for scholarships: don't ever pay for a scholarship search service. All of the legitimate scholarship search services are free.
Reese, same question for you. What do you wish more students knew about paying for school?
Wow, I don't know how I could follow that, but maybe I'll try. I think it's like you don't kind of like what Jennifer was saying earlier. You don't need to be a financial aid expert to navigate this. You just need to be an informed decision maker. I think it's really important to ask questions early. And when it comes to financial aid and you're paying your tuition fees and financing your MBA, like the best decisions are proactive and not reactive. I would always much rather talk to students, before fall bills are due instead of a time where maybe it's October and the fall bill is past due and there's late fees. That just is so much more stressful for the student. It's just a situation I would want to avoid. Because there's a lot of nuances that, here in the financial aid office, we would love to help you explore. As Jennifer was saying, a lot of our students use a combination of funding. Well, if you have employer sponsorship, there's nuances on how it's going to work if it's paid directly to the school by the employer or it's a reimbursement. If you're on earned bill and earned benefits like military education benefits, there's a little bit of nuances. There's a couple items that those military education benefits, cannot pay. So even if you have 100% eligibility, there are going to still be a couple things that you might be out of pocket. Yeah, there's scholarships, there's your financial aid, you have your federal loans and your private loans in the financial aid kind of landscape loan market. And so there's a lot of things, and I just would really love to, talk with students. Pretty much my favorite thing ever is talking with students about planning for financing their MBA. So if students are like, oh no, I don't want to talk to Reese. I don't want to bother her. I'd be like, no, please. Like, I want to meet you. I want to talk to you.
I love that. And I think that's coming through very loud and clear in this conversation about how much the two of you really enjoy and your team enjoys connecting with students. I want to take this sort of next part of our conversation to talk about some of the changes to financial aid. I was on a webinar earlier, yes, I should say late 2025, with a service that connects MBA programs, and they asked some prospective MBA students a question about their awareness of some of the changes that have happened in the financial aid world and financial aid landscape with the passage of the Big Beautiful Bill. And there was very low awareness of the implications of those changes, the elimination of the Grad Plus loan, these kinds of things. And so we're doing a little bit of a public service announcement here to help people learn more about this and what it means, what it is, and what it isn't. But I couldn't think of two better people to ask these questions to. So, Jennifer, can you explain to us a little bit about how financial aid, what are the impacts of the passage of the Big Beautiful Bill on financial aid? All this really kind of takes effect July 1 this year. So.
It does. Thanks so much, Brett, for letting us have a platform here to talk about this a little bit. So the most important thing that I think students need to know is prior to now, in the federal student loan program, graduate students and professional students could borrow two loans, a direct unsubsidized loan and a direct graduate plus loan. The direct unsubsidized loan was capped at a total annual borrowing of $20,500. The graduate plus loan could then fill in the rest of what a student might need all the way up to the costs of attendance. So hypothetically, if you had a cost of attendance, what's cost of attendance? Cost of attendance is tuition and fees plus books and any applicable living expenses. And every school has to create a cost of attendance and publish it. And that cost of attendance is then puts some limits around how much financial aid you can receive while you're in school. So if our cost of attendance was, I'm going to make this math really easy for myself, $120,500, right? And you had no scholarship money and no personal resources, you wanted to borrow the whole thing, you could borrow $20,500 under the direct unsubsidized program and the $100,000 under the graduate plus loan. So what is happening going forward, effective July 1, is that no new student in a program can borrow a grad plus loan. If you are a continuing student in your same program and you borrowed previously, you can continue to borrow a graduate plus loan. But new students entering school in 2026 after July 1 cannot borrow a graduate plus loan. So before anybody goes, wait, you just told me that we could pay for our education. So what we are doing here at Darden and what many of our colleagues are doing at schools around the country is that we are creating a list of private education lenders who will loan to Darden students under terms that may even be more favorable than the federal loan program, because we're now in the competitive market. And many of our students are going to come to us with really, they've worked, they've got good credit scores, they're competitive for financing. And so many of these lenders will even be able to potentially beat the interest rates that we see at the federal level because they're competing for our students' business. And turns out Darden students come, they get a great education, they get great jobs, they make great salaries, and these lenders absolutely want to do business with our students. And so that's probably the number one thing I would want students to be aware of is the Grad Plus loan is going away, and new borrowers will be borrowing through the private market. So what does that mean? What are the most important things for students to consider just on this topic? One is come to us with the best credit that you can. So if you know you've got a credit issue, now is the right time to get that cleaned up. Now is the right time to reach out, pull your credit report if you haven't done that in a while, get your FICO score, understand what all of that looks like, and if there are issues that you can fix them. Now's the time to attend to that. Good credit will be a key going forward to being able to borrow in the private loan market.
Reese, when you think about these changes, what do you think about when it comes to working with students?
Right, I think, Jennifer nailed it with Grad Plus Loan. Another kind of element that I want to add about changes coming from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act is also kind of the changes in repayment structures for federal loans. Is that the repayment program that was based on income is called income driven repayment (IDR) plans. In case any listeners experience or they have current loans that are on this, there are some really big changes that are coming to the IDR plans, and there's several different IDR plans, and they're being consolidated to two and a half options, kind of depending on your own background. And so there's a new repayment program called RAP that will be launching a little bit later for new borrowers. And I think that's kind of one of the areas where, as I was saying earlier, looking with students about what the repayment's going to be. So the with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, the repayment kind of repayment landscape of federal loans is going to be changing a little bit. So it's going to be another kind of great thing for us to help review students and show that, okay, so now you have this world. And also, as Jennifer was talking about with private loans, a lot of our students may have just been borrowing federal loans. So they just had the federal loan kind of policies, federal loan servicer to think about. Now, if they have the direct unsubsidized loan as a federal loan, and they have the private loan, let's say they're just borrowing from one private lender, now you have two different lenders, two different servicers, different terms, different policies, and it's going to be really good to kind of make sure you got a strong grasp on all that information.
Yeah, that's where your team could be really helpful. Jennifer, one of the things I'm thinking about just listening to you and Reese talk is, for a while, certainly with the introduction of, more federal lending and Grad Plus loan, once that got started, the advice was really you should be looking at the federal loans. Maybe, some students went with a private loan, but by and large, most students were borrowing through the federal government with those loans. Now, this landscape is shifting, and it looks like obviously more people are going to be going to the private market, and so like the messaging is changing a little bit here. I mean, obviously students should feel comfortable with private loans, it sounds like, based on what you shared.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I was saying a moment earlier, in some cases, I think you're even going to find that a private loan is going to serve you potentially better than the federal loans did. One of the things that I would hasten to add is borrowers can still borrow the federal direct unsubsidized loan. So for folks who are familiar with the financial aid process, there is a free application for federal student aid. We call it the FAFSA for short. Financial aid's full of acronyms, so we call it the FAFSA. And so if you filled out the FAFSA before, or you had that on your radar as one of the things you needed to do, please still do that. That will still make you eligible for $20,500 in a federal student loan program, should you wish to borrow that. But you're going to have options, right? You can apply, you can fill out the FAFSA. It gets you eligible if you're a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident of the United States. That gets you eligible to borrow that. And you can then compare that loan program with what you have available to you in the private loan market. And if you've got a better deal in the private loan market, then we would counsel you to borrow all of your funds from the private loan market. But it costs you nothing to fill out the FAFSA, and having that $20,500 available through that program is always a good option to have in your back pocket. We would also encourage students who are incoming to Darden to fill out the CSS profile form. And we have that advertised on our website. The CSS profile form is a form that we use to evaluate students for any type of need-based aid that they might be eligible for. So we certainly encourage students to fill out that form as well.
Yeah, Reese, and I know you've been working closely with Access Darden, which is really focused on our full-time MBA students. You want to talk a little bit more about Access Darden?
Yeah, Brett, I'd be happy to. So for our full-time MBA students, Access Darden is Darden's need-based grant program, and Darden is really focusing a high degree on affordability and access to the degree. And so students that are applying to and admitted to our full-time MBA program can submit the CSS profile for consideration. And actually, started what we do is we use the CSS profile to measure your financial strength prior to entering Darden. So it will take in information on your income, it will take information on your assets, and we'll be able to look at everything and really take a measure of your financial strength prior to entering. And I say prior to entering because, all of our full-time MBA students, they're departing from their jobs, and so that's why we're looking at that financial strength prior to entering Darden. And right now, Access Darden, the awards range from between 5,000 to $25,000. It just depends on the applicants information. And also right now we have the funding for Access Darden to award w- about 25% of the class. So what that means is we're looking for the lowest 25% of students with the lowest financial strength. And we also are looking at the economic context of the applicant's home country. So for our domestic students, international students, both domestic and international can apply for Access Darden. We are comparing your information, your financial strength to the economic context that helped to create your financial strength. And so we're really trying to, help students explore different resources, including need-based aid, as part of the resources with Access Darden.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And one of the cool things this year, and this is an update from last year, for folks who are applying to our full-time MBA program who fill out that CSS profile as they're going through the application process, if they're admitted, they can actually get an update regarding the outcome of the Access Darden evaluation along with their decision. So they can have, to the earlier point that's been made around having all the information available to you, so this full picture, that can certainly help. I mean, you can fill out the CSS profile after you receive that decision too. That's absolutely an option. But if you are interested in kind of knowing, okay, let's say you're admitted, what does the merit scholarship evaluation look like? Are you eligible for any need-based aid? Good way to ensure you get all that information at the same time is to fill out the CSS profile as you're working your way through the application process.
Totally, Brett. How did I forget that? Yeah, this is the first year, so that it's great for anybody listening that has applied to round two. I'll plug that the deadline to submit, the priority deadline to submit the CSS profile for round two consideration will be February 18th. And what that priority deadline means is that when you receive an update on your admission decision, you would also receive an update on your Access Darden eligibility as well. Really trying to get as much information to students as early as possible, so that way they have the time to really explore their options and connect with us to talk about their financing plan.
So, Jennifer, I'm curious. We talked about the updates related to the big beautiful bill. There's, I mean, probably any number of places people could find on the internet that talk about this. But are there any sort of reputable sites or any sites you would particularly recommend for people who are looking to learn more about all of the stuff you talked about?
Yeah, yeah, I would. This is a place where your Google search bar can be your friend, and it can also get you down some dark alleys. So um, I highly recommend NASFA.org. And so that's NAS, N as in Nancy, NAS as in Sam, F as in Frank, AA. It stands for the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators, NASFA.org. And if you go to their site and in their search function, just put in OBBBA, One Big Beautiful Bill Act, they have a phenomenal resource section. It is not limited. There's stuff behind a firewall, but there's public information that they have posted for students and families on that site. And I just have they're the best resource that I can recommend to you. The federal government has posted information as well, but that's going to potentially be a little more technical in nature. And so NASFA does a great job of just breaking that down into plain language that's really consumable for most folks. And so highly recommend them as a resource. Obviously, we're glad to talk about that as well. But NASFA is a great place to go and do your initial research.
Reese, you work closely with students as we've talked about here. We undoubtedly have some folks listening to this podcast who are planning to start at Darden this August. What would you want these students to be thinking about now as they prepare financially for business school?
Brett, this is like my favorite question ever. So for all of our students, whether they're full time or looking at one of the programs up in Roslyn, kind of what we've been talking about with private loan market, I would definitely recommend looking at your credit report right now. Going back to Grad Plus loan, the way that the Grad Plus loan approval process worked is if you cleared the approval by 1 inch or you cleared it by a mile, you had the same interest rate, the same origination fee. Now with private loans being more based upon your own credit, really great time to start cleaning up your credit. If there happened to be a department store card that you sort of forgot about and it's like 90 days late or it's been in collections, now is definitely time to start getting that handled, because the better your credit is, the better terms you're going to have. It's, as much as we were talking about, that school starting, soon, we still got, 6 months and on 6, 7 months. And so that's a really, really good amount of time to get your credit looking as shiny as it can, because 1% interest rate, that may not seem like a lot right now, but when you're looking at 5, 6 digit loan balances and you're looking at interest accrual over the years that you're in school and the interest accrual during the repayment terms, I mean, that could definitely help you out in the long run. For our full-time students, who might be leaving their jobs and coming to join us in Charlottesville, I would start really looking at building, I'm going to call it a realistic budget. You have your tuition and fees, you have your living expenses, look at apartment costs in Charlottesville, do a little searching on what food costs are going to be in Charlottesville. It's going to be really, really important to start having an understanding of what living expenses are going to look like for you, because then we can kind of help you show, like, okay, what's going to be realistic in terms of what financial aid can help you pay for. Also, for all of our students, understanding loan timelines and cash flows. We're talking a lot about private loans, but private loan funds, they still are going to be dispersed directly to the university. And then we have timelines when we can disperse the funds to your student account, and then excess is then refunded to you to help with living expenses. That's something that we can really help you with, is understanding, okay, so I'm moving to Charlottesville, I have these loans, I have to pay my rent, I'm trying to figure out when I'm going to have this money to help me pay my rent. We can give you a lot of insight on cash flows. I was in grad school as a full-time grad student for 5 years, and I lived my life by timelines and cash flows. So I have such an emotional understanding of what these students are really looking at. And then I'd also think about post MBA goals. Talking about, Darden students get great jobs. Let's talk about ROI. Let's talk about everything that we can talk about right now to help you make sure that you feel confident about your financial decisions. And I also, will say that, kind of, again, the earlier you plan, the more options you have. And I'll do anything. I'll do anything I can to help students avoid last minute decisions. I'd much rather talk through things right now than work with students to untangle stress later.
Appreciate that. Jennifer, anything you would add on this question of like what students should be thinking about now as they prepare financially for school?
Yeah, I want to double click on the cash flow issue. One of the most common things that happens is a student will reach out to us in the summer and say, "Hey, when can I get my student loan money? I need to put a deposit on my apartment, or I need to pay for moving to Charlottesville." And so to be really clear, you won't get your student loan money until after school starts. So it's really important to plan now if you're going to move, right? Whether you're moving to Roslyn or whether you're moving to Charlottesville, if you've got to move for this and you're counting on financial aid to help with that, you're not going to get your student loan funds until after school starts. So it's really important to start planning now for any funds that you need to get yourself started in school. And so that's really important. The other thing I would just mention that kind of plays into all of this, is if you are like, look, I appreciate y'all telling us about this borrowing stuff, but I really don't want to borrow. I'm going to make, arrangements to pay without using student loans. The university provides payment plans that can go from 3 months to 5 months to give you the ability to pay over time. And you'll get information about that pushed to you, but that is also something that we've already got. We already know that information. And if you reach out to us, we can sit down and help you determine which of the dozen things we've talked to you about today might apply to your situation and how to put that recipe together for an amazing outcome for you. So we're glad to help with those things.
Yeah, I love all those points. I also mentioned for military benefits users, there's also an incredible team at the University of Virginia that works closely with students who are using military benefits to pay for school. And we always encourage people who are using one of those mini programs. There's a lot. I've got Alphabet Soup. There's quite a bit there too. If you're using any program related to that to pay for school, you want to connect with that office. Our admissions team can help with an introduction. We always typically, if somebody reaches out with a question like that, we'll copy the financial aid team as well as university registrar folks who work with military benefits users. Uh, Hopefully the big takeaway here is that there are so many people here to help and support you as you think about how to pay for school. Jennifer, any final thoughts before we wrap up here?
Gosh, we'd love to meet all of the students. We're so excited. That's not we're not blowing smoke. We Working with students is our favorite thing to do. Every one of us in this office in some way got into financial aid because we wanted to work with students. I promise we didn't get into it for the paperwork. We truly want to have an opportunity to meet and engage with students. It's still the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning, is feeling like I'm going to get to come into work and get to engage with the phenomenal community that we have here at Darden, that our students just make so vital and so exciting to be part of. So please reach out, give us a chance to meet you, and we're glad to help you in any way that we can. We've got collectively, uh, legitimately, more than 100 years of experience in our financial aid office, in financial aid, and so we're glad to put all of that to work for you.
Reese, any final thoughts?
I'll say, if anybody comes to Charlottesville and visiting Darden, and you're wondering, wow, I wonder like if Reese would like to meet me, I can already tell you the answer is yes. Please feel free to reach out, and if I can meet you, definitely would love that chance. I'll say, you can ask questions, use the resources that are available to you, and I'll just kind of, my final plug would be to just say that financial aid really is designed to help support your goals. It's not supposed to stand in the way of your goals.
Amen.
That's a great place to end. Jennifer, Reese, thank you so much for your time today. Always a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you for sharing your expertise with our listeners.
Thank you, Brett. It's been a great day.
Thanks, Brad.
And that was my conversation with Jennifer Holby and Reese Mears, two members of the financial aid team here at the Darden School of Business. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, @virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.